My name is Rosina.
I'm David.
I'm Madeline.
My name is Rachel.
I've been homeless 2.5 years.
I've had 7 different landlords in 7 years.
I retired about 3 months ago.
I'm trying hard to raise my kids on a low income. It's not easy.
At the heart of every social issue are real people's lives.
I just couldn't see a way out.
We live in a time of enormous uncertainty.
2 million homes short.
Change, disruption, uncertainty.
But if we come together, we can create a better future.
Because the truth is,
The ideas that have truly changed the world have been collective endeavours.
That's where the greenhouse comes in.
The greenhouse.
The greenhouse.
the greenhouse.
The greenhouse is a bold new approach to changing lives.
Hundreds of staff and tenants
From hundreds of housing associations,
Came up with hundreds of ideas.
To tackle the social issues that they felt were most pressing.
these ideas were given to 25 people
Chosen from across the housing association sector.
Newcastle, Birmingham, London, Worcestershire, Bradford.
They were grouped into 5 teams.
each focused on a different social challenge.
We are the People Power team.
Transforming tenure.
Our team is Halting Homelessness.
Building better.
Adapting with age.
They were given training and inspiration.
They were given space to work.
And they were given 16 weeks to dedicate to the problem.
They have taken the ideas generated by the sector
And developed them into solutions.
To change people's lives.
This process isn't about talking about innovation, it's about doing the work.
This week, very special week, we've survived boot camp. Yay! Today we've come to our base for the next 16 weeks.
Yeah, it's kind of possibly a bit overwhelming at this point.
To try and find a key deliverable product at the end of 16 weeks, let alone demonstrating that to 800 people at a conference. It's a daunting task.
There's no point in coming to this to aim small. I've come here to do something that's actually going to make an impact.
For the last 2 or 3 weeks, been getting insight into the issues.
Probably before
Me and Jay went to Portcullis House to interview an MP.
Jackie and I went to visit the Bishop of Manchester.
I've never met so many influential people and had to bumble in with a strange accent.
We've done research from around about 50 different stakeholders, from CEOs to contractors to residents.
As we've been out and we've been gathering insights, consistent themes have been coming around.
The conversations that we're having with tenants, they often come back to food.
We're 6 weeks in at the moment into the project.
We've got an idea now.
I can see we're learning new skills, getting new ways of thinking.
No one's telling you what to do, and it's exhilarating. It's probably the most difficult thing as well.
It was a bit of a down day yesterday.
We had an idea which we have since discovered is not going to work.
It didn't really have legs, and I think that really knocked us for 6.
But that's how we found it. It's very up and down.
There have been elements where things almost seem like they were going to plan, but most of the time you're just wading through this whole tide of uncertainty constantly.
Are we taking on too much? Are we doing too little? Which comes before which?
There is a hell of a lot still to do.
In one sense, time's moving really fast, but when I look back, it feels like we've been doing it forever.
My world has suddenly got big.
We set ourselves quite a challenging target, and we kind of smashed that.
We've refined and refined and refined. We've pivoted a few times, but it's been exhilarating, really.
One of the things that's strange about this project is you're working on something that doesn't exist yet, and you're hoping it's going to get taken up and then exist.
Who are our future tenants, and how can we ensure that we're ready?
I was really excited for the summit to show everyone what we've done.
A little nervous.
Nervous.
Really nervous.
Definitely nervous.
I am just racked with nerves.
But also excited.
Our idea is big, it's game-changing. It could really revolutionise the way we build housing.
When you think how much they've achieved from a standing start, it's really quite remarkable and a reflection of the talent that we have in the housing association sector.
Now these ideas leave the greenhouse for the first time.
and these teams face their biggest challenge yet.
To secure the support they need to make these ideas a reality.
Each team will pitch their idea
to experts from the world of innovation
and senior leaders from across the housing association sector.
That's you.
Right now, these are just ideas.
You can turn them into solutions that can transform people's lives.
Lives like mine.
like mine.
Like mine.
Like mine.
Welcome to Housing's Dragon's Den, the first time that the ideas from our groundbreaking innovation programme have been pitched to you, the sector, and to our dragons here on our panel. My name's James Green. I'm Futures Programme Director at the National Housing Federation, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by our five fantastic dragons, experts from the worlds of housing and innovation. So first we have Belinda Bell. Belinda Bell is Director of Cambridge Social Ventures, Cambridge University's incubator for social innovation. Anna Shield from Big Society Capital, their head of origination, leading on housing, and Big Society Capital have been a partner with us all the way through this and have been absolutely fantastic. We've got Dr. Cynthia Bullock from Innovate UK, a senior innovation lead there, the government's innovation arm. Dave Allen, the founder of What If, a global innovation consultancy, the largest independent innovation company in the country, who have been working with us every step of the way and have been absolutely fantastic. And finally, Baroness Warwick, who you all know well, the chair of the National Housing Federation. So how today will work is each team will have 7 minutes to pitch their ideas to you, and then they will field questions from the dragons for 6 minutes. After that, the dragons will be able to share their views on the different ideas that have been presented to them. They'll have 2 votes, their head and their heart. So which of the ideas caught their imagination, and which of the ideas would they invest in tomorrow? I've been very clearly told to say some of the dragons are investors. They're not committed to anything today, but it's an indicator that gives you a flavour of where they're at before we then hand over to you and give you the opportunity to unleash your inner dragon and shape where these ideas go next. So that's it from me. I'm now going to hand over to our first team, Adapting with Age.
Hello. I've got the very unfortunate task of reminding you all that you're not getting any younger. The ageing population is no secret. In fact, by the year 2026, we're going to have 2.5 million more people over the age of 65 in the UK. And of those, 1 in 6 are going to struggle with an activity of daily living. And that's not things like doing the dishes or dusting the top shelf in your living room. That's really simple things like washing your face or going to the toilet on your own. The link between poor quality housing and poor health is undeniable. And poor quality housing cost the NHS last year a massive £634 million. And many of you may think this isn't necessarily your problem, it's a health problem. Actually, the population is ageing in our stock. The most prevalent age group in social housing last year was those between the ages of 45 and 54. And 20% of new entrants to the sector last year were over the age of 55. The people who are aging in social housing. And this is where our problem really came from. 95% of people over the age of 75 have absolutely no intention of leaving the home they're currently living in and the homes they love. So as social housing providers, what do we do to make sure that the people living in our homes, the people who are aging in our homes, are doing it well and living independently for longer?
So what does this mean for our customers? This is Sheila. Sheila represents millions of people who are currently being made disabled by their homes. As Sheila's getting older, she's finding it more difficult to move around. She's particularly struggling with getting in and out of her own home and moving around the bathroom. Sheila definitely doesn't want to move from the home that she currently lives in, and she doesn't want to lose her independence either. Sheila needs to adapt her home to be able to stay living in it independently. And the Centre for Aging Better research shows that minor adaptations can actually make the biggest difference. But the problem is that most people are actually delaying getting adaptations installed because of the way that they look. The research also shows that we've got a huge opportunity here to really disrupt the adaptations market. Getting the basics right is a game changer. Sheila needs to install the current adaptations into her home, but she definitely doesn't want them because they're clinical and they're unattractive and they make her feel vulnerable. Sheila has spent years decorating and personalising her home. She doesn't want to compromise her standards. We wouldn't accept these substandard products, so why should she, just because she's old? So what are Sheila's current options? To help her get in and out of her home, she could go ahead and get the current adaptations installed, but this compromises her standards and it makes her feel vulnerable. Her second option is that she carries on as normal. She doesn't get anything installed and she puts herself at a high risk of falling and ending up in hospital. Her third option, which is actually the worst option for Sheila because she's quite the social butterfly, is that she stops leaving the house because it's too dangerous. She becomes socially isolated and disconnected. Sheila also adapts her behaviours rather than her home, so she chooses to eat less and drink less to limit her trips to the bathroom. The shocking reality is that rather than get these current products installed, people are making dangerous decisions that damage their health. Sheila doesn't understand why this is as good as it gets, and neither do we. Would you have these in your home? I certainly wouldn't. Sheila doesn't want them, and neither do your tenants. We all deserve better. So what does better look like? Currently, Sheila has 3 options, but we're giving her another one. We're giving her a better one. We're giving her invisible adaptations. Our products are designed to be discreet and to be dual purpose. Sheila loves them because they're sleek, they're discreet, they make her feel young and trendy rather than old and vulnerable. With these in her home, Sheila is happier, she's healthier, and she's living better for longer. She's eating normally, and she's getting in and out of the house and being able to go to bingo every week.
These products have been designed with Sheila in mind, but they are truly universal. I'm sure there are plenty of people in the room who have slipped in the bath or shower after a few too many on a late night or an early morning. No names mentioned. Our goal is to have these as completely standard in all our stock. That means we can get much needed adaptations in homes before they're needed, before people like Sheila have crisis points that reduce her mobility and take away her independence. This is ultimately a real movement of the focus from reactive to preventative in adaptation installation. That change in focus does mean this is an invest to save model. We spent a lot of time over the last couple of days talking to many of you about how much these will cost versus what you're already buying and putting in homes. The fact of the matter is we've done a lot of insight speaking to your housing managers and asset managers, and what we know is that those of you who think you're getting a really good deal on existing adaptations aren't. And some of you are paying 3 times more for basic adaptations, the clinical, grubby, ugly things, than other housing associations in this room. The other thing is that once you've installed one of these, it extends your void duration. So a home becomes empty, you're showing around potential new customers, and they absolutely don't want to take the property on. you're then paying even more again to have that adaptation removed ultimately. The Social Housing Green Paper reiterated the responsibility that we as social housing providers have in delivering homes that are fit for all of our customers, particularly as they age. The cost of doing nothing is so much greater than making an investment now.
We've got a real opportunity here to be leaders. No one else is doing this. We've got a real opportunity here to make the lives of all of our tenants and people just like Sheila happier, healthier and better for longer. Sheila isn't a persona that we created. Sheila is real. She could be your grandma, she could be your mum, she could be your next door neighbour, or she could even be you one day. She's actually my grandma, and I think she deserves better, and I hope you do too.
So, well done on a fan. Okay, we're going to run out of time. Well done on a fantastic presentation. I'm now going to go over to our dragons. We have 6 minutes for our dragons question. I want to start with Cynthia from Innovate UK, who's done a lot of work in this area.
Yeah, I have to say thank you so much. That was absolutely captivating, and I will fund you any day. I was sold on when you said that was my grandma. It was the emotional pull was just, yeah, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So I loved the fact that you made it personable. It wasn't just about a piece of technology out there. It was about this is the person that this was going to affect. It was about really impacting people's lives, so that was brilliant. However, coming from Innovate UK, we're all about accelerating the UK's economy. So I guess my question is, one of the things that we know stop people from buying in some of these adaptations is the fact that it's being marketed to old people. Nobody wants to accept that they're in that bracket. How will you circumvent that? How will you go about trying to stop that happening in this case? Because you've got a cracking product.
I think we've really tried to make a universal design. So we wanted something that kind of can fit into everyone's home, but they wouldn't notice that it's an adaptation, so that it's going to remove that negative stigma. And I think in terms of the actual accessibility of the product, it can be used by anyone. So again, it's not marketed at older people. It's for older people. They have the most benefit from it. But actually, Sheila thinks that it's amazing. I've actually shown her the picture with her superimposed in it. And she wants it. She's first on the list. But she thinks it's something that I would have, and I would actually have it. So that's why she wants it. And I think that's the kind of beauty of it, really.
Do I get one more question?
Yeah, of course.
So one more question around, do you feel that there'll be any validation necessary, in which case, I don't know what the sort of pipeline of products are, but do you envisage that some of them would require a level of validation to ensure that they are doing what they say on the tin, kind of?
Yeah, so we, in the last 5 or 6 weeks, have worked with a product designer in Manchester who managed to mock up what you can see out there and have them manufactured. So that was a matter of weeks. What we did provide them from the start was the ISO standards that any aid or adaptation would require. A big part of the aids and adaptations currently, though, is the way that they're installed and ensuring they're installed in the right way. But the ISO standards have been covered yet.
Fantastic. Any questions from our other dragons? Diana.
Well, I'm going to be puff here because I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I've had the opportunity of going around, I hope you all have too, talking to each of the teams, and I have been so impressed, not just with your enthusiasm, but with the care that you've taken to research, to investigate, to talk to you, to talk to others, to talk to decision makers, to talk to tenants themselves about what they might need and what's important to them. And I think, given the size of the problem that you've identified, I love the simplicity of your idea. But I did want to ask you, I wondered whether, in looking at this question, because you've come down with this very simple, very straightforward solution, which I think is delightful, but did you investigate whether there are any tech solutions that might have been relevant here? Because in a way, that's what we all tend to look for when you ask these sorts of questions.
Yeah, tech and digital solutions seem to be the go-to answer, especially in this sector at the moment. We're not doing the basics right. So people are refusing to have adaptations in their homes because they look awful. And the downward decline in their physical health and mobility and independence is really rapid. The Centre for Ageing Better have shown that minor adaptations are the single most effective thing in keeping someone living independently in their home. And if we can't get that right, how can we compete with the likes of Amazon and Apple to try and bring tech into a home?
Great. And there we go. Dave, question from Dave.
You've talked about this in the context of this world. My instinct about this is, I've got a 90-year-old dad. He's not in your housing stock, but I think he'd want this. So have you looked at the scale of the market beyond your world, and how big is that market, starting, say, in the UK?
Yeah, so 80% of older people are actually homeowners, they're owner-occupiers. So by no means is this a silver bullet in terms of targeting the group of people in this room today. As a group of individuals, the one major asset we had between us was access to this market. And so we really wanted to get that right, and it's kind of going back to getting the basics right. Really core to our vision and core to our values is that these products would ultimately be co-designed with customers. And so in addition to having a market on our doorstep, we've also got all of the customers living in all of these homes who we can work really closely with to co-design. We've got a really ambitious long-term route to market strategy, but we just wanted to start where we can start really well and leverage the asset that we've currently got to hand.
I think it's great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, a massive round of applause for Adapting with Age. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So now, Building Better. Please take to the stage.
On a site not far from here, the main contractor paid their site manager, let's call him Dave, an incredibly low wage. Dave was struggling to make ends meet. But there was a way Dave could supplement his wage. For every £1 he saved his main contractor, Dave kept 50p. So Dave looked at where he could use less fire-stopping material, cheaper insulation, or lower quality paint. Things the client wouldn't notice. And the client didn't notice, not until a year later, when investigations to fix a persistent leak uncovered missing fire-stopping material in a bathroom, and all the bathrooms in that block. The block was evacuated while the replacement work was carried out. Although this is a true story, it's not a criticism of Dave. Dave was a victim of a broken system. You could say the main contractor, was one bad contractor amongst thousands out there, but that's not true. We heard lots of things from over 90 interviews with people across the sector, and stories like this, they came up time and again. The reason this story stood out was because it epitomizes everything you told us were wrong. There were three main themes. An over-reliance on the traditional construction industry. The diminished role of design in our new homes, meaning we don't build for the long term. And the complete lack of control we have in the system. The system incentivizes perverse, combative practices where we have to battle to get the agreed level of quality. Can you think of another area of life where you are the customer and yet you have to actively argue to get what you paid for? The car industry, the retail industry. Now, some of you told us that construction is much more complicated than those industries. But why is that? It's because we, as clients, we've not been strong enough. We've not been demanding enough. We know that after we've designed and built the average home, 86% of its cost is in its long-term maintenance. So why don't we build as if we're going to own the home for the next 60 years? Trapped in the current system, at the best case scenario, we're going to pay more for repairs and asset management. But at the worst, we endanger the lives of the people we house. And the argument we are making today is that our biggest challenge is our inability to come together as a sector against the status quo. Not only do we need to change the way we build, but we need to completely disrupt existing relationships. And the only way we'll do that is to tackle our complete aversion to collaboration. Because we are, right now, in a moment where coming together could be the vehicle that changes everything.
Our solution? Building better. A vehicle that will enable housing associations to have greater ownership over the homes we build and how we maintain them. How will it work? Well, let's say you're an ambitious housing association looking to develop a new scheme. You come to us to pick a design from our range, and next that design gets sent to an off-site manufacturer vetted by us. And because we work with the best, your homes will be built exactly as they've been designed. No compromises. And that's brilliant, you say, but you'd also like to know where the savings are? And apart from a massive reduction in delivery time, we will give you access to the data that makes repairs and maintenance so much simpler. Now, none of these elements are new or revolutionary, but it is exactly by bringing them together in this way, with us working together, that it will work. Let me break this down a little bit further. We will first work across the sector to create a set of ready-to-use designs for off-site. Homes that are designed with our needs as long-term asset owners in mind, but that our residents love too. And because we'll have worked with all of the stakeholders up front, the hard decisions will have been made up front. And that means no more value engineering and no more battling to get what we paid for. Our research uncovered that housing association design specifications or employer requirements are 88% the same. So rather than starting from a blank sheet of paper every time, we will use standardization to drive efficiency in the process. Next, we will use our combined purchasing power to buy homes at a price that works for us. And because manufacturing techniques have quality assurance built in, we can build like we're actually going to own the home for the next 60 years. Finally, we will bring access to detailed property information to your fingertips, enabling you to make intelligent decisions on the homes that you build through us, but on future builds too. And that feedback loop, that means you can be confident that our designs continue to get better over time. That's good for residents because they're living in smart, energy-efficient homes, and it's good for asset managers because you have the components in the house that are the best value across the sector. The natural follow-on from greater efficiencies in managing stock, of course, is the unlocking of capital to develop more affordable homes. So we're saying building better will deliver a product that is right for the people that live in it. And the bottom line, better quality, a massive reduction in time of delivery, and a significant reduction in maintenance costs. But we have to act now. Off-site manufacturing has not yet caught on to volume house builders because it is not yet fit with their business model. And this window of opportunity will not be around forever. And we know that off-site hasn't previously been able to make the case on risk, cost, and quality, but that has changed. Our research has found that at least 25 housing associations up and down the country have either researched or piloted a scheme. And that siloed approach, it simply cannot leverage the real benefits that manufacturing techniques have to offer. Alongside this piloting, there's been a sea change within government. Homes England, the Greater London Authority, they have told us they think our idea could be game-changing. So this isn't some faraway dream. The momentum is building right now. At the beginning of this conference, 6 housing associations and 6 local authorities had signed up, and another 6 have come on board in the past 2 days. This is our sector coming together to achieve our purpose. Now, we know, too, that off-site manufacturing is not the complete answer to the housing crisis, and change certainly isn't going to happen overnight. But imagine a future in 10 years' time in which we are the lead house builders in this country, in which we build the homes our tenants need with the quality they deserve in a system that we control. No more compromises for us, our tenants, or for Dave. because we are the only sector that can come together in this way, and we can change the face of construction if we do. What we need now is transformative leaders to join us. So what will your legacy be? Will it be to take a step to help us to end the housing crisis? Because you, the people in this room, you're the only ones who can.
Okay, we've got to stop. Right, another fantastic presentation, and over to our dragons. Anna.
Thank you. What an amazing presentation. And I think there's a few things that have really struck me, which is I've learned a huge amount as somebody who's not embedded and deeply rooted within that development process about the multitude of perverse incentives that are leading to the wrong outcomes for so many people and for so many organizations. So the way that you have really got under the skin of that and tried to redesign and think about it is incredibly powerful. And at the heart of this, what you're trying to do is really reset the power dynamics that exist currently between housing associations, the people that you serve, and some of the other industries that are out there. And at the heart of it, that's an incredibly bold and ambitious a project. I guess my question is, to get started with something like that, to reset power dynamics, you need critical mass. You need to have that negotiating power. What do you need to get going with this in order to be able to sort of have a good shot at doing that?
Fundamental to this is that combined pipeline, and fundamental to that is collaboration. I'm going to hand over to Jay to talk a little bit more about the work that we've already done with housing associations so far and exactly what numbers we need to make it work.
Yes, so without housing associations working together, this idea just simply won't work. In our insights, we heard that there's a couple of reasons housing associations don't work together in development. One was competition on Section 106 sites. One, we heard it's a bit of a boys' club, and we don't like to share our failures, so we don't want to collaborate in that way. But we did two things. We did one experiment, this was a workshop, and we got about 7 housing associations together, and with that kind of carrot of more homes delivered and increased quality, they were more than happy to work together. And we also got a couple of housing associations to share the holy grail of their employers' requirements, which are typically very sensitive documents. So in terms of the first step, it's absolutely getting the housing associations on board with the right behaviours who really want to build more and better quality.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Belinda.
Thank you for that lovely presentation. I love the fact that you started by talking about the collaborative opportunities within this sector, and as someone who isn't from this sector, I guess you all knew that you didn't collaborate really well. I didn't realise. I thought you were all terribly collaborative, obviously. But anyway, I was thinking about the longer term vision you have for this. I was wondering how much actual financial modelling you've been able to do yet, and I'm wondering if, in common actually with Dave's question to the last team, if there's a potentially private sector market for this as well. Could you get to a point where you're building for the housing association sector, but the other potential purchase of housing development could come to you as well? Do you know that?
Just on the latter point, because we have thought quite hard about the financial model, and I'll hand over to Tim in a minute to talk a little bit more about it. But on the point of the private house builders, do you mean that might be another market? It might be, but what we've found so far is it's not really in their interest to take on off-site manufacturing. It doesn't fit with their business model because they don't really need it to, and they are thinking about it. There are kind of R&D teams that are starting to experiment with it. It's become cost neutral in comparison to traditional build, but when they do get to it, it will be because everyone else has got to it, and so it's almost like there is this window of opportunity for us to really kind of take it by its hold because it fits so closely with our own kind of business models and our purpose. So it will come to them perhaps in the future, but I guess we don't want to rely on that. We can do this ourselves.
And yeah, in terms of our financial model, so if you had to give it a title, it would be a freemium model. So, and the reason for that is the designs are free for housing associations to access, and we want it that way because we want this to be as easily accessible to housing associations as possible. Now, for each unit that we deliver to the off-site providers, so each unit that gets ordered, we will charge a small percentage to the off-site provider. And the premium part of the freemium service will be to access the designs. And the reason that there is a premium on that is because we don't want to have this big integration piece with all housing associations' current IT infrastructure. So we're going to host all that data. We're going to take care of all the infrastructure that goes behind it. And if they want their information, we'll provide them with the information that they need when they need it. All they need is access to the internet.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the Dragons, Cynthia?
So I had largely actually, because I can see a bit of an alignment between what you're trying to do in terms of making sure the structure is the right structure and what the earlier team are doing. I guess, is that inbuilt within the platform that you're seeking to deliver, so that these homes are adaptable and can grow with the individual, both in terms of the stuff that you put into it, but also actually what the structure itself looks like?
Well, there's two kind of components to it. Obviously, we've got standardisation, but with that, obviously, the design is really important. So for us, the design has to come from the people and the way in which they live. So we know that the way that people are living has actually changed. The traditional homes are built as 1-2 bedroom flats and houses because of the nuclear family that was kind of created in the early 1900s, and that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. So we want our designs to reflect the changing ways in which people live. So that might mean that the units can adapt, I guess, components that may be 1 bedroom now and 2 bedroom in a configuration. But more than that, thinking about design really cleverly in terms of the space inside it, so that it might be a cupboard now, but it might actually be able to be a lift in the future. So we really want to make sure that design has been really considered for the residents.
And the idea of multi-generational living as well is incorporated.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Building Better. Absolutely fantastic. Well done. So now I would like to welcome People Powered to the stage.
Hi, I'm Will, this is Katie, we're the People Powered team, and this is the challenge you set us, to think in a new way about how we can end the poverty premium. The poverty premium costs low-income families in the UK an average of £490 extra a year. It's endemic, it's unfair, and it's wrong.
I'm not going to lecture this room about poverty. Social purpose runs through you like a stick of rock. And you're always thinking about this, it's always in your minds. And we see that so often. You insulate homes, you provide skills and training, all sorts of skills and training. You also do financial assistance and advice. You do so much, there is such a long list of things you do. But nonetheless, poverty costs our country £78 billion every year. And the effects that it has on the people who experience it are heartbreaking to hear. During this process, we spoke to a woman who said this to me, and I don't think it will ever, ever leave me. I worry about my debt all of the time. It's the first thing that I think about in the morning. I can't tell my husband because I think it would kill him. Sometimes I think about killing myself. And a man who said, I'm at a level. It's all right, I suppose, but nothing ever changes. I'm not going anywhere. I've got no control. I've got no choice. And they were really, really hard things to hear. What was this group of 5 people going to do in the face of such a problem? And I guess it's sort of weird, but also appropriate, that in a celebrity sort of obsessed age, we ended up going to Hollywood, or at least Hollywood via Port Talbot. This is Michael Sheen. You will know him from his barnstorming performances as Tony Blair, as Brian Clough, and of course is Arrow, the Vampire King in the Vampire Twilight Saga. But we know him because he is the inspirational leader of the End High Cost Credit Alliance with the absolutely brilliant Titarian Housing Association in Wales. And he faced a similar conundrum. And he said to us, you need to be pragmatic. Our task is to make tomorrow fairer than today.
So with that in mind, how could we turn the dial? Well, we made decisions. We'd start small, we'd test, we'd learn, and we'd grow. And all the time we were searching for that space where we could start to make a real difference right now. And we found the answer. It's food. That statistic is horrifying. And it shocked us because you don't really expect that. You think people use high-cost credit for luxuries or emergencies. Now, the fact is, it's food. It's something as simple as that. Too many people are treating food as the discretionary element of life in the face of mounting bills and impossible choice after impossible choice. It shouldn't be that way. And we decided that we needed to do something about that.
Over the course of this conference, we've asked you what food means to you. And this is your story. It's art based on what you told us. You talked about pleasure, you talked about entertaining, you talked about gifts and gratitude, but mainly you talked about family, security, safety and stability. That's what food means to you. And it's no different for people in low incomes, other than they describe what happens when you don't have that. They describe the sense of failure when you're a bad mum because you haven't put food on the table for your family. And that's why we chose food. It's harder to do, but it's the right one to do because it's how we can make a difference to people's lives.
So now I'd like to introduce you to Rita. I'll tell you a bit about her life, and you can see if you recognise her. So she's a single mum of 2 kids, and she balances that childcare with 2 part-time jobs on 0-hour contracts. She's amazing because she makes it work. But when it comes to food, Rita doesn't have the time, energy, or resources to plan and shop ahead for a week's worth of meals. And without a car, those out-of-town supermarkets where the best deals are just aren't accessible to her. She certainly can't do a big shop. When it comes to meal shopping, for Rita, that means out of necessity, it's on the day and it's local, and that means she pays a serious premium. So we priced it up. It could be costing as much as 3 times to buy the ingredients in a local convenience store as it would do in, for example, an Asda store. Now, that makes the ready meals or even takeaways a more affordable and actually rational choice for Rita in her circumstances, but she knows that they're unhealthy and they're not necessarily the best for her kids, and that makes her feel like a bad mum. Now, that's not fair. Rita wants and deserves the pleasure of cooking and eating a good meal with her family, so we made it our mission to help her do just that.
So over the last 2 days, we've introduced you to and we've presented the Good Food Bag, a social enterprise dedicated to disrupting our food economy and giving people on low incomes a proper choice about what they have for their tea. For Rita, what does that mean? It's a click and collect online service where that morning, or to be honest, whenever suits her, she can choose what meal she wants that evening. She can order it. She can later go and pick it up when it works for her close to home. And she can go home and, et voila, rustle up a really delicious meal for her family really quickly. It solves the food poverty premium because it's about giving somebody convenience, access, it's close to home and to work. It's affordable, genuinely affordable, competitive with Asda, and knocking the socks off what they're ending up spending in other places, particularly convenience stores. And also, it's really easy. It's simple to cook these meals because we've designed them really cleverly. This is what it will mean for Rita and how it will work.
The Good Food Bag works on the age-old adage that by bulk buying and combining our power to do that, we can pass savings on to our customers. To illustrate, one of our basic chicken curry recipes, we priced it up at Asda. The ingredients will cost you £5.79. In the local convenience McColl's store where Rita would be shopping, it's going to cost over £13. But we believe if we do this properly, the Good Food Bag can bring that in for under a £5. Now, we've dug deep into our customer segments. We've found that there's 12 million people in the UK paying this unfair premium around food because of failures in the food economy. That's our market. So we got to know them. We've analysed and learnt about their spending power, shopping habits, food heavens and hells, how and when they shop, and what works for them online and what doesn't. We've proven the demand, and we've achieved high satisfaction with our trial bags. Now, the Good Food Bag's not a crisis intervention, but it will have social impact baked in at every level, from employment opportunities to apprenticeships to putting money back into our communities. And crucially, it puts money back in Rita's back pocket to put her back in control of the food that her family eats and build up their capacity and resilience to face all the other challenges in their lives.
So why now? Food security has perhaps never been more challenged as we look to Brexit and we look to the impact of climate change. We do actually have a roadmap for where we want to go. But to do it and to make it happen, we know we need help. We need expertise, we need support, we need guidance, and we need friends. It's probably true that the 5 people on this stage can't change the world on their own, but perhaps working together with you, with housing associations who have your critical insight into your customers, who are the people we are trying to help, perhaps we can change the world together. Thank you so much for listening.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, people. Thank you so much, People Powered. Now, over to our dragons, and first, Belinda.
Thank you for that presentation. As you say, this is like a core social justice issue, and that's a shocking statistic, that 49%. I can see why you chose to go forward with the food thing. Perhaps you could explain to us, because I don't think it was clear in your presentation, how the pickups are going to work in your mind. Because one of the reasons that people end up in food poverty is because of lack of physical access and food deserts and so forth. So how are you thinking you can get around that issue? I saw in the image, was that a mobile van? I don't know, in the cartoon.
It was indeed. We're going with a refrigerated van model, but perhaps, Jackie, you could take us through it?
Yeah, so the distribution model is a click and collect model, so you would order on the app on that day, choose the most convenient collection point for you. We've thought about it quite a lot, about the best route in, and obviously click and collect is the most efficient rather than home delivery, but we do see the potential for future of home delivery, particularly for those vulnerable customers. Actually, the people that we spoke to around our kind of target who were in those food deserts, it was about convenience for them, and sometimes the existing models, their home are not suitable for those kind of delivery. You can't just leave a box outside of someone's house. For us, it's about kind of mapping where the best place is to be, understand where our customers go. We recognise, as Katie said, we could use refrigerated vans, and we could be located at transport nodes, so when you're coming home from work, you could pick it up. We could use schools, so if you're picking your children up from school, you could collect it then. Employers as well, it would be a huge employer benefit, so you could offer it as part of that. But obviously the refrigerated van's key to that, and partners, the biggest cost is that kind of logistics, so us really leveraging the partners that we've got to do that.
Thank you very much. Any further questions from our dragons? Diana?
Perhaps I could ask. I think this is another deliciously simple idea, but it's an unexpected one. You were asked a very big question, and yet here is the answer is food in some form. What kind of reaction have you had from the housing associations that you've been talking to about this, for them to react?
I think what is very telling at the moment, you'll have noticed it over the summer, it felt like there was headline after headline about, holiday hunger, about the impact of not being in school, about how children aren't well fed. I think that absolutely going back to the point about social purpose, so many of the housing association folk in this room and beyond that we have spoken to during this process, they're about people. Homes are what we build, isn't it? We don't just build houses. And for people to be happy in our homes, they need to be well fed. It's what gives you the grounding, it's the glue almost of our lives that means we can cope with every other problem that's thrown at us. And every housing association we've spoken to has completely got it. It might not be that it's for that housing association as an investor, but they all say, I would love to have that for my tenants. I'd love to have that access and that joy that good food and the pride you get from cooking that at home can bring.
Thank you. Any further questions from our dragons? Anna?
Thank you again, for reminding us of such a sort of critical issue, and also what it really brings home that some of these issues exist because there are not necessarily, private sector solutions are not motivated to innovate for people who are poor, because they're not necessarily attractive customers, and that's a key differentiator around you as housing associations as essentially social businesses. Can you just give us a bit more of a flavour of the kind of almost the competitive advantages and what you bring in terms of being able to make this a viable proposition, where perhaps there may be a dearth of interest from alternative private sector solutions?
So I think what's really interesting, and Will talked about it in our presentation, who are your competitors, I suppose, is one of the questions that's really important to us. There are some people who face the food poverty premium who will be fortunate enough to live close enough to a really good supermarket like Asda, where they can get the deals. But actually, a lot of where poverty is growing are people who are in work, and often in work in unstable jobs where they don't have security of hours and they don't know when they'll be available. So the decisions those people end up making is often reflecting their time poverty as much as how little money that they might have. So what happens is you get home, you're really tired, you don't have any food in, and either you get a takeaway or you go to the local shop near you, which is the convenience store, which is so expensive. So I suppose where we see ourselves is positioning what we do around competing with that. And actually, the amount of money that those people are spending is inordinate. It's absolutely huge. To get the chicken curry recipe that Will talked about locally, if you go to the takeaway, you're not spending less than a tenner. If you go to the convenience store, you're spending £13. If you give up on the idea entirely, you're spending £2 on a really bad pizza that you feel like isn't really looking after your kids or your family. So I suppose for us, that's what we're thinking about. That's the opportunity. We can see ourselves taking business away from the takeaways and taking business away from the convenience stores and just doing it. And actually, we would be very easy to do that for a lot less than they're paying at the moment. But we want to go further than that. We want it to be really, really good. We want it to be cheaper than Asda. We want Asda to look at this and think, we need to change what we do.
That was perfect, but if I can add to it, I would say that we know we've nailed this when people start to give up the HelloFresh box and actually go for the good food bag instead, because it's going to be that good. So it's kind of what we call the Aldification of the market. Say, Aldi used to be seen as the budget option, but now people choose it because they know it's quality, and M&S shoppers will go to Aldi and Lidl quite proudly.
And a question from Belinda.
So given that you're going to have this enormous scale and put these other box schemes and so forth out of business, at some stage people are going to be asking you about packaging. Have you thought about how, and I haven't had a chance to look in your bags, have you thought about how you're actually going to do the packaging in this context?
So we have. Certainly whilst we're in the click and collect phase of what we're doing, it's really important that the food stays refrigerated at obviously the highest levels of standards in terms of regulation and health and safety. But it's actually not that dissimilar to if you go to a shop and you buy your food there. So paper bags, we're thinking about everything being recyclable. We want it to work in that way. If we then move into delivery, then that's an entirely different kettle of fish in terms of what you have to do and the sort of standards you reach. But wherever we get to, it has to be as environmentally sound as it can be, and it has to be as anti-waste as it can be. And a huge part of that is actually also true of the food. Like, this is attractive because you're not wasting food as well as not wasting other resources. So we're very mindful of it. At the moment, it's about trying to use local producers, limit your miles. It's about making sure that you use paper where you can, and that everything marked and says this is recyclable where it is, because that's one of the things people have said to us, and our insight really matters to them.
Thank you so much, People Powered. Fantastic presentation. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Transforming Tenure.
Imagine if there was a way we could revolutionize the housing market with a new product. A way of getting even more aspiring, working families onto the housing ladder. And imagine if doing this could have a positive impact on your balance sheets. At the start of this program, chief executives across the country told us that a generation of people are being denied the security of home ownership. With house prices spiraling, an entire generation are trapped in precarious and expensive private rent. Now, with house prices spiraling, we took 12 weeks to speak to some of the 2.8 million households in the private rented sector that want to own, and we have to help them. 2.8 million households that want to own, but can't. They're trapped. They're locked by rising prices and high deposits. But we want to talk about just one of these families. This is Jamie and Carla. They're a working family with 2 children. They live in a private rented home. It's their 3rd in just 5 years. Like 40% of tenants, they have a lease of less than 6 months. Their last landlord decided to sell, but they couldn't find another home in the area, so they faced a difficult choice. A 1-hour journey twice a day to take their children to school, or move their kids out of the area. Their eldest daughter really, really wants dinosaur wallpaper for her bedroom, but the landlord won't allow it. They're saving every month for a deposit, but it's hard because they're paying full market rent. House prices are rising in their area, so it doesn't matter how fast they save, they just can't keep up. In fact, it will now take the average aspiring, working young family 19 years to save for a deposit. 19 years. Owning a home for them is the answer. It is. But it doesn't matter how hard they work, because it's getting further out of reach. But what if things were different? What if they could feel secure knowing that they wouldn't have to move unless they wanted to? What if they could decorate and make their house feel like a home? Imagine if they could buy without a high deposit and without a mortgage and build up ownership simply by paying their rent. And imagine if delivering these homes delivered a positive return for you. We can give them a better option, and we can be part of the solution.
It's for these reasons that we have developed Just One. The last time that our sector came together to innovate in this space on this scale was with shared ownership, a hugely successful product that stood the test of time 40 years later. We believe that Just One could have just an impact. It allows families like Jamie and Carla a home of their own now, and not in 19 years' time. So how does it work? Well, they've fallen in love with a new build home in Southampton, but at £340,000, it's simply out of their reach, even with shared ownership. Luckily for them, it's available with Just One. Now this allows them to buy a Just 1% share at £3,400. They pay a low-cost rent on the part that they don't own, as well as a monthly overpayment, which goes towards buying more shares. So that means she can have her dinosaur wallpaper and they can stay in their home. She's not moving away from her family. They were paying £1,100 a month to rent a similar home on the open market. And they're also saving for a deposit. With Just One, the total amount that they pay is only slightly higher. Each year, as they own more, the amount of rent they pay decreases and the amount they purchase increases. And this means at the end of year 10, they own a 25% share of their home. At this point, they transition to becoming a shared owner, just paying rent in the normal way. And in a typical case, like Jamie and Carla's, they're then able to get a mortgage which allows them to buy another 40% share straight away. It offers a better deal for families like them because at the moment, they're just too poor to buy, but they're not poor enough to get any extra help. So what does it look like for us as housing associations? Well, our financial modelling, done with some of your help, thank you, has shown that this provides a positive net present value and a payback period comparable to shared ownership.
We've taken this idea to Help to Buy shows across the country to test the concept with customers, and the response has been phenomenal. People are desperate. They're desperate for this to become a reality, and housing associations are the ones to make it happen. We are the true champions of people in housing need. It's in our DNA. But that definition, the definition of need, has changed. People who were served by the open market 10 or 15 years ago are now locked out. They're trapped in a cycle of rising rents and high deposits. The appetite for ownership is the same. What's changed is the way that housing associations are now seen as a part of the solution to the housing crisis, in a way that we haven't seen in decades. The Prime Minister herself said exactly that on this stage just yesterday. But we have got to act. We have got to make it happen. Now is the time for us to innovate again, and we can do it with just one.
We're already in talks with the GLA, investors and industry leaders who are really excited by the potential in this opportunity. And we're now looking for housing associations to come with us and be part of the pilot. You'll be able to help shape the future of Just One and see what it looks like. So, currently, aspiring working families are being failed by our housing market. But we can make their distant dream a reality. Help us to build the future of home ownership with Just One. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Transforming Tenure. So now over to our dragons, and Diana.
That's absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much indeed. And it resonates so much with some of the presentations that we had earlier from our young leaders, looking in a similar way at innovative ideas for how we can improve the offers that we make. I wonder if you, not sure I quite get the business model, and I wonder if you could expand on that just a little bit, perhaps in terms of the reactions that you've had from housing associations, and in particular, who is your main target for this product?
So specifically, we've looked at lots of different demographics. We found one thing is that this varies quite a lot geographically. So for instance, in London, if you want to access shared ownership, even the minimum level of 25%, often you'd need a household income of £60,000. So that's very big even for families who are working quite consistently. That shifts slightly, but there are lots of places with really high pockets, and it's getting more all the time. Yeah, so pass you on to Angela, you can tell you a bit more about it.
I think just to add to that, so basically this works where there are areas where there are high value homes. And basically what we've heard from housing associations is they know that their shared ownership product, even at the minimum of 25%, is not serving a large proportion of the families that really want homes.
Any further questions from the dragons? Cynthia.
So I had a question, largely because you mentioned that this was comparable to shared ownership, and I guess most housing associations would have had a level of sunk costs, so there's a kind of inertia to change. What is it that you can offer, or what is it that they can leverage from what they currently have with shared ownership that means they're not having to invest a huge amount to be able to offer this product?
Great question. I'm just going to pass you to Miranda to talk you through that.
Love shared ownership. That's why it's coming to me. So I think the first thing I would say is the opportunities with shared ownership now are fantastic. As a sector, we are doing a huge amount of work, and innovating, becoming more modern is who and what we are now. So the time is definitely right. In terms of the actual operational side, it sits really nicely alongside our existing shared ownership operations. So most housing associations that are becoming sort of more commercial in terms of their sales and making things better for customers are combining that sales element. So you're going to go into a development, and the way that you buy a home isn't vastly different. Just the way that you finance it is.
Dave, were you going to come in there?
Yeah, I mean, so from a branding point of view and a need point of view, I think you've absolutely cracked it. I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels. The bit I'm still struggling to understand, and and if I'm a banker or a money guy, is the bit that I'm going to understand. Can you tell us a little bit more about how the financial model actually works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done a lot of work on the finances. We've got our finance expert here, John, who will talk you through.
Yeah, so Dave, basically we've worked quite heavily with a discounted cash flow model to work out how this would work financially for the sector. We've also talked to a significant housing association in the South East to input our data into their development appraisal management system. And it comes out that this has kind of cash flows that are not too dissimilar to shared ownership. And actually on a payback period is about half of what the shared ownership model delivers. And we've also had initial discussions with some of the sector's valuers from a kind of security valuation perspective. So for housing associations looking to secure this against with their loans. And it looks like initially the first year of this product you would receive about 85% vacant possession on a valuation perspective, and that would obviously diminish over time. But then in year 10 it converts to shared ownership, and then you would just secure it on a kind of shared ownership basis. So that's the kind of financial model.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Belinda?
So I'm not super familiar with the financial model behind shared ownership, so this question may not make sense. What happens in the period between day one and year 10 when you have a 25% stake, when me as the tenant owner resident, if I want to move, what happens to my 3 or 4 or 5%?
Yeah, so just like shared ownership, there is a resale market, so they could sell on. Miranda, do you want to talk us through that?
So the share purchase is actually happening annually. So the customer, should they wish to move, albeit the target market we have found are looking to stay for at least 10 years, but life happens, doesn't it? There will be a resale market which will sit alongside our normal resale market. The likelihood is that once you get into the higher shares, really sort of 4% upwards probably, is that our target market won't be coming in and buying cash. So the option then for the housing association is to sell it with a buyer coming in and buying the 4% off of the customer, so you get your money, you can go and move on. And we'll probably sell another 21%, taking it up to a standard shared ownership with a customer getting a deposit and a mortgage.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much to Transforming Tenure. Absolutely fantastic. Well done. And finally, Halting Homelessness, please can you take to the stage?
Sometimes when people see a homeless person on the street, they might ask what happened. They might assume it's a troubled person who made a series of bad decisions. The blame is on them. But what about the troubled system that also played its part, whether this person's descent into homelessness was inevitable? What actions could have been taken sooner? Why didn't they happen? We know troubled systems. We've seen them before. We know the story. We've heard it before. Kathy's story shocked the nation. It inspired a generation to tackle homelessness. Many of the organizations in this room are testament to the change that happened. In the last 50 years, you've done more than most to tackle this broken system, and yet homelessness is back in the headlines. We're here today to tell you about our journey on the greenhouse and how we can help our sector to design out homelessness.
We met with 50 different experts and people with lived experience of homelessness. And we asked them, what are the big challenges in this current system? 3 themes consistently emerged. Firstly, almost all interventions are crisis-led, rather than prevention. Secondly, we don't collaborate. We work in silos and we don't learn from each other. Thirdly, we don't make evidence-based decisions. Instead, we were told that we often evidence decisions that we've already made. For many of you, this isn't anything you haven't heard before. You know the system is broken. And we have an idea that can help change this. We believe that with better use of our data, we as a nation can design out homelessness. This must involve all organisations who have a homelessness footprint, including us. Last year, as a sector, we evicted 47,000 people from our homes. Many more left through abandonments. We don't know what happened to these people, but many will have become homeless. If we could just halve that number, we could make a real difference to the lives of thousands of people. We need to change this broken system. We'd like to introduce you to Halting Homelessness.
Halting Homelessness is a data platform that supports social landlords to design out homelessness. It collates your data around your homelessness footprint, so that's everything from evictions and arrears to domestic violence and family breakdown. It aggregates your data alongside other local landlords and landlords nationally to help you to eliminate your homelessness footprint. It helps you to move from crisis interventions to prevention. We all have the data needed to make this happen. It's simple. What if your organization had access to data which told it to stop wasting time and money, to stop sending texts and letters to residents who are over £900 in arrears? Because the evidence could tell you that any resident over £900 in arrears is 99% likely to be evicted. What if the insight could also tell you that in your area, in social housing, 2/3 of domestic violence victims are likely to receive a notice for possession because of arrears? Would you act differently? Of course you would. Our ambition is to help social landlords to have insight at this level based on the data they already have. We believe with this insight and the right interventions, you can transform the lives of thousands of people who are already in your homes. And it makes business sense too. Last year we spent £400 million, over £400 million on evictions. That's an average of almost 8,500 per household evicted, and £28 million on court costs alone. We know the system is broken. We believe we can change it.
So how will we make this work? We've been working with one of the world's leading data companies, EPAM. We use their products every day, like Google apps such as Gmail. They believe that if landlords use their data in this more effective way, it could be transformational, a real game changer for us. Housing associations are already getting excited by our idea. A number have signed up as early supporters of Halting Homelessness. And over the last 2 days, a further 15 associations have expressed an interest in getting involved. The momentum is building. But why wouldn't it? It just makes sense. Back in Kathy's day, we didn't know what we do now. There wasn't the internet. No ability to generate insight at this level. The information age hadn't happened. Nobody predicted that we could have the world's information in our pocket, but we do. So why don't we now use this to change this broken system and tackle our impact on homelessness? Our ask today is that you back our idea and help the sector to design out homelessness. Thank you.
Fantastic presentation, Halting Homelessness. So, over to our dragons and Dave.
Yeah, I have to admit personal bias. I love this idea. And I spent yesterday with Amazon, who are one of my big clients. And if you look at Amazon, they started in books, and they now dominate the world. And at the heart of everything is data. I mean, that literally is if you were to redefine what their company is, it's the world's biggest data company along with Google. You've talked about one thing, which is this eviction. Can you give me a sense of, if that's like the books, the first step, can you give me a sense of what data could allow this group to do?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, when we first went out to the sector to find out about homelessness, we looked at the way that data was and wasn't being used, and we immediately thought that we are missing a big opportunity here, and we started to look at how we could use data in so many ways. But we had to bring it back for the point of this project really to halting homelessness, and that led us to evictions. But certainly all of us who were quite turned off by data to start off with, and we're now converts, because we just see the power of data. And so from that perspective, yes, we think that this is the start, and once you get people hooked on just what you can use your data for, then the sorts of things that it could be used for across the sector is massive. Particularly, for example, looking to the future, because as we've heard from Adapting Age and other teams, our tenants aren't going to stay the same. And so how do we predict what they need, what they want, how their lives will change, and how do we get ahead of the curve rather than always being slightly behind it? So we do see the whole way in which we use data, how it brings collaboration, as really quite powerful.
Thank you. Any further questions? Cynthia?
So and please forgive my ignorance, because I know nothing about this particular area, but reflecting on my background, which is more sort of biochemistry, we often say to people, we don't want you to develop diagnostic tests for medicines or treatments that aren't available, because all it means is, I don't know you've got something, but I can't treat you. Once the housing association is aware of the value of the data and understand the impact of it, what can they do? So taking the eviction issue as an example, so you find out that there are these groups of people and there are these issues. So then what's the solution? Because presumably you can't just say, fine, that's it, you can stay rent-free, we're good.
Yeah. I mean, I think the key thing that we wanted to emphasise to people is we're not talking about no evictions. There will always need to be, sadly, some evictions. And that's been some of the confusion when we've talked to people about the idea. But it is about reducing those evictions. And when we've looked at the data and the information, some of it is really quite obvious of some of the interventions. And it's the type of intervention, but often it's the timing of it. And that's where the key comes. We talked to one organisation that provides financial support to tenants who have got into arrears. And they found that with certain parts of the country, if people got into arrears of just £200, there was over a 90% chance they would end up evicted. Whereas, and whatever you did after that £200, you weren't going to help. Whereas if you went in at that or before, they had about a 94% success rate of not only sustaining the tenancy, but paying back the arrears. So that just makes huge economic sense for everybody, as well as the tenant. So it's some of those subtle things, and it really is about, you can do some of this stuff tomorrow from what you find out from your data. Some of it may lead to longer term service redesign, and there's really everything in between.
Fantastic. And our final question from Anna.
Well done for, in 12 weeks, taking a huge, thorny, complex issue and I guess identifying the part of it that you think you can start to make a change in. But I think also more importantly, you've identified the part where you recognise you're part of the system, that you can do it, and that's a hard thing to do. It's very easy almost in a system to point to other actors and to say, actually, it's because they're doing this that problem is arising. So to come to it and say, this is the part we can actually start to change now, I think is fantastic after 12 weeks. I guess my question building on that is, this will require, I guess, some as much practice change, but also culture change as you start to take some of the results of this back in. And just, you touched on some of the positive feedback from the associations you've talked to, but perhaps you could just give a flavour of the sort of response and the extent to which people were sort of up for embracing that change.
Yeah, well, when we initially looked at some of our own data, and as you said, we started off with looking across the whole sector, but the feedback came, well, you've really got to put your own house in order. So that was quite key for us. So when we looked at our own data and talked to some of our own organisations, some of whom already do some analysis but felt they could do more, others, when we asked, the top team didn't really even know how many evictions they made each year. So, and even that, those sort of questions started a shift. And I think when we've talked to other organisations, what they've actually said is that they want to do this because they understand that it's a no-win situation with any eviction. And you're right, it is about the cultural change, because when we ran our session earlier with people, several people were saying, if we came on the pilot, we would want some help with actually creating that sense of we need to do this, rather than just going in and reviewing systems, because then you don't get the buy-in of the people who actually manage those systems.
Thank you so much, Halting Homelessness. So we've had 5 fantastic presentations. I wanted to very quickly go round the dragons and get your initial reflections on that. So just your head and your heart. So which of these ideas caught your imagination as your heart, and which of them would you invest in tomorrow? We won't commit you to it right now. Your head. So Belinda.
So I think for me, obviously, first of all, the presentations were absolutely astonishing, and the quality of what these teams have done in this period is amazing. I'm super, super impressed, and really well presented in general as well. I think for my heart, it's going to have to be people-powered, because of everything that they said about food and everything we all know about food. And I was really touched by the work they'd done where people at the conference had said about what food meant to them, and just the fact that that's true for everybody, right? And enabling that seems to be a kind of social justice imperative. So that's my heart.
Head.
And my head is hacking homelessness. Although we didn't talk about the business model, I can see that you could sell a viable business proposition out of that very rapidly to housing associations who will be able to see a return on investment. And I can see in my head how that would be something that you could sell to housing associations and obviously create an impact as well.
So Anna, very, very briefly.
Okay, this is really hurting me. And
I know.
I'm really having to fight the recency bias as well, just to say, and I don't think I'm going to make a distinction between heart and head, but to say I think the building better in terms of just the scale of the ambition and the sense of really resetting those power dynamics, I think just excites me tremendously. And I also think perhaps more with the sort of head, I think actually transforming tenure in terms of really taking an extension of what housing associations do so well, and building on those really great insights around what the customer base might be and what it needs for the future.
Cynthia.
So my head and my heart are in the same place. Yes. And it's adapting with age, because I'm not getting any younger.
Right, Dave, over to you.
I'm just for sheer scale of ambition, and because it's at the absolute core of who you are, I love building better. I think it's an insanely great idea, and I think there's something about you as a group of organisations and an ecosystem getting behind one big idea would be stunning. And then my heart, because I'm with Amazon and I think data is the future, I'm going to go with the hacking crew.
Brilliant. And Diana, from you.
I'm going to go for, I loved the transforming tenure, because it just seems to me to be taking something that we're very good at and moving with it into a totally new dimension. And I think it's offering something that's really essential. I guess that's really head, actually, not really heart. And I think that I'm afraid I loved all of them.
Okay.
But can I also say, I hope you've all taken out patents on these. Your IP is going to be extraordinarily valuable, and there are people in this room who are going to steal these ideas from you.
So I just wanted to... So in the last few minutes, I just wanted to first say a massive thank you to our dragons. You gave healthy challenge, but you really helped the teams bring their ideas to life. So clearly our dragons are divided, or to put it another way, collectively they think all of your ideas are brilliant. In a moment you'll be able to unleash your inner dragon and shape where these ideas go next. And I'm going to just very, very briefly talk about next steps, but before I do that, I just want to spend just a few minutes just to congratulate the teams and reflect on what they've achieved. So I think the first thing to say is just well done. You did an absolutely incredible job. And I think I speak for everyone in this room when I say that. Absolutely incredible job. And given how fantastic and high profile our dragons are, and they were absolutely blown away, I think it's incredibly striking. And, you know, it's incredible to think that only 12 weeks ago, you barely knew each other. You'd certainly never worked together before. Most of you had never been involved in innovation, and almost none of you had even worked in those social challenges that you've developed ideas in response to. And I think today you've presented 5 groundbreaking ideas that can make a real difference to the lives of hundreds of thousands of people across the country. And that's just an incredible achievement. So the last thing I wanted to say is a year ago, at this conference, we launched Creating Our Future, and we set ourselves the challenge of co-creating ideas to change the world. Today, we have our ideas. Whether we change the world is up to you. On all of your chairs is a postcard. Next to each of these teams' names is a tick box. If any of these ideas caught your imagination, tick the box. You can tick one box, you can tick all 5, and we will be in touch with you to talk about how you can get involved in the next stage of this program, becoming a pioneer and taking these things on. Because ultimately, this isn't just about ideas. We want to change the world. Because of the brilliant work you've done, we're in an incredibly strong place to do that. So thank you so much, and thanks to our dragons.